Heather?
So we were hoping we could share a few inspiring stories with you, if that's all right. In each of these, we want you to focus on the people and the stories and the relationships, but also notice three other components that are showing up for you, or three other themes that are showing up for you. Look for the way in which they build community, the way they make cost-conscious decisions, and the way they've planned for long-term success. Our first story is from Seattle, Washington, and Jeff and I just returned from Seattle, and we were quite inspired by this group of people. And that's one of the greatest things about our work, is that we get to see people in places all over the country and notice the way folks are they're just passionate and intentional about making change. And so I'd like to show you this picture of Helen Hicks. Helen is right there in front of the sign, and she is the founder and first director of Tiny Tots in Seattle, Washington. Helen opened this program in 1969 to fill a need for care in the south end of Seattle. And luckily enough, there were people that were in this class who were speaking to us, and they said, yeah, we used to enjoy playing and climbing in a luscious cherry tree, picked raspberries in the neighborhood, were able to freely explore. That was their outdoor time. And it sounds pretty idyllic, doesn't it? It's something that folks in early childhood are trying, and programs in early childhood are trying to return to today. Now take note, just a second, Jeff, because I want them to take note of the person there in the front, the one with the bow. Her name is Angie Hicks Maxey. Angie Hicks at the time, and she's the daughter and now chief executive of Tiny Tots. And it is because of Helen and Angie and the great strong community that they've built around themselves that Tiny Tots has come to the place they are today. And Tiny Tots has a long history of being a place for families to come together, a place for quality programming, and a place for children who have special needs to learn and grow alongside each other. It's a place for families in their community. What I noticed on our recent visit was this deep connection to their roots, but also this drive for continual improvement. It has a lot to do with Angie's leadership and the people who she surrounded herself by, or maybe the people who have surrounded her. So now Tiny Tots, and you can, is an organization that is estimatedly serving 70% of families that are at low income and receive subsidies in order to afford the monthly fees. So Tiny Tots works with a program called Early Childhood Education and Assistant Program in Washington State to provide some of those services, but they have many funders and many other places to find support. So in 2021, there's the next slide there, Jeff. Angie and the folks at Tiny Tots made a commitment to be as healthy as they could be. And I think I'm going to make that commitment over time. Be as healthy as you can be in whatever way that is. And this was, during the pandemic, they had those new pandemic protocols that helped them. And they were hearing more and more about the nature benefits. And Angie said to us and to a reporter that she was speaking to, I wasn't really on board with this at the beginning. She kind of thought that playgrounds with bright colored plastic slides and climbing structures were great, and they are. But there is something even better. She thought maybe she wanted flat turf and a plastic crawling thing, jungle gyms, and then she'd call it a day and be on with it. But because she's a good listener and she heard from her community, and had read some studies about nature play, our nonprofit, Nature Explorer, came forward and in her research, and we provided both training for teachers and also an opportunity to design one of their spaces. And this is at the Othello campus. And so now in the days after the building of Othello, the Nature Explore Classroom in Othello, children are engaged in daily time in nature. This is a very urban setting, but children are watering plants. They're talking about the fragile baby plants and trying to help them and give them protection. And Angie Hicks Maxey said that the children are connecting in ways that they don't have a chance to connect to at home. They don't have that plant material like they used to in 1969 around their homes, and now they can in their Nature Explore classroom. Funding for this Othello classroom was made possible through several avenues, including PNC Bank. And Tiny Tots was able to leverage dollars to build their first outdoor classroom because they were ready. They had plans to make a difference. And we'll talk a little bit more about that, being ready. Once they completed their first space, they wanted to share their successes, and they shared their story with local press and raised awareness. And that established a sense of pride. It generated more support, and the momentum kept going. So in an effort to be as healthy as they can be with the inspiration of the natural world, they changed the food that they served, the way they approached education, but what didn't change was their dedication to a job well done and their commitment to their community. This picture shows a few of the folks who've been part of this project, but only a few of them. Notice there aren't any children in this picture, and all the teachers are teaching during this time, so there are no teachers in this picture as well. But what you do see is a multidisciplinary team of folks: designers, educators, planners, health professionals, and safety professionals. What this team does well is they make long-term plans. They meet regularly, and so when money becomes available, they already have a plan to put in place. And in an effort to keep everyone invested and engaged, they actually have an avenue for the ways teachers can share feedback and be part of the planning process, and they reflect and review on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and one thing I just want to add to this, Angie and Marcella, right next to her, are cousins, and they were in the same class growing up. They grew up on the street, and so this is really a community center. The relationships are generations old, and so there's a unique sense of trust that exists with this group of people. But then there's also a commitment to honesty and open conversation. So when things don't work, people feel empowered and they feel like they have the ability to speak up. They're respected, and so that doesn't just happen in a designated planning meeting. It's a daily conversation about what's working, what's not. Folks who have been there for maybe a year or two on staff are comfortable speaking up and saying, you know, this space could really use X, Y, and Z, or we're really missing these pieces. So everybody feels a part of the process, and that buy-in that I was speaking about in those previous slides is really alive and well day to day in everything that they do. And we could really feel it in that design process last week.
And so hopefully you're hearing something about community building, making cost-conscious decisions, and planning for the future. Do you want to tell us about the next project, Jeff?
Yeah, absolutely. So the planning that happened in that first project, and that they were so great about sharing their story in the local press and with their community, really fueled the next effort. So they've secured funding because of all of that buzz and all of that positive energy, and the fact that they were ready for 2 more spaces. So Heather and I had the privilege of working with them last week to start envisioning their first space. So this serves primary preschool age. It's just black and white right now because we're still in the design process, but really an incredible privilege with a group that was the inspiration was so reciprocal there. And so we're currently working on the design of their third space, and they've got money ready to go once the plans are set and they've secured a contractor. So I know that that's not always the case for everybody, but I do think that there's value in thinking about plans before money is always on the table, because it has to come from somewhere. And sometimes putting that vision on paper is that catalyst that really helps you get the support in both advocacy and dollars. So the next one I'd like to share with you is the American School of Marrakesh. So this is in Marrakesh, Morocco.